The call came in at 2:14 a.m. on a quiet stretch of highway just outside the small town of Brenton, Missouri. Dispatch records would later show that the voice on the other end was calm but trembling. A young man, early 30s maybe, whispering that someone was following him. The recording is short, only 47 seconds, and it's the last anyone ever heard of Daniel Reeves. He told the operator he was driving north on County Route 9, near the old quarry, the kind of place where the air smells like limestone and rain, where the road cuts through miles of empty farmland. You can hear the sound of gravel under his tires, the rush of wind through a cracked window, and then silence. The call ends with a faint, "Please," before static fills the line. When officers arrived 13 minutes later, the car was still running, headlights on, driver's door open. But Daniel was gone. The sheriff's department treated it as a routine missing persons case at first. A car abandoned in the middle of the night could mean anything. Breakdown, drunk driver, panic attack. But there was no sign of struggle, no footprints in the mud, no tire marks from another vehicle. Just Daniel's cell phone on the passenger seat, still recording from the emergency call, the screen flickering low battery light across the dashboard. Deputy Mark Allen was the first on scene. He later said it was one of those places where sound doesn't carry, the kind of silence that makes you whisper without realizing. He found Daniel's wallet under the driver's seat, his jacket still hanging in the back. No blood, no sign of forced entry. It was as if he'd simply stepped out of the car and vanished into thin air. By morning, the news had spread through Brenton like wildfire. It's a small town of 4,000 people, the kind where everyone knows what kind of cereal you buy. Daniel Reeves wasn't a stranger. He grew up there, graduated from Brenton High, moved away for college, and came back 5 years ago to take care of his mother after her stroke. He worked as an HVAC technician, dependable, quiet, known for fixing air conditioners in the middle of summer without complaint. People liked him. No enemies, no debts, just gone. The first 24 hours were textbook, search grids, dogs, drones. But the trail ended 50 feet from the road, right where the gravel gives way to tall grass and a slope toward the quarry. The dogs caught a scent there, faint, almost lost to the wind, but it stopped abruptly at the water's edge. Divers spent 2 days combing the murky pit, pulling out old tires and scrap metal, but no body. The FBI got involved on day 4, when the county realized they were in over their heads. The official reasoning was that the case might involve interstate elements, but everyone knew that meant one thing: something about the scene didn't add up. Special Agent Valerie Brooks arrived from Kansas City, the kind of investigator who looked like she'd been living out of her car. She listened to the 911 tape on loop over and over, then played it backward, slowed it down, isolated background sounds. And that's when they noticed it. Faint, barely audible. But there, another voice. A low whisper, just before Daniel's final word. It was impossible to make out the words, but the rhythm was unmistakable. Someone else had been there. Valerie had the FBI's forensic audio lab clean it up. The result wasn't clear enough to confirm a second speaker, but it was enough to change everything. The department's working theory, that Daniel might have staged his own disappearance or drowned in the quarry, fell apart overnight. Someone else had been on that road. The first suspect was obvious. 2 days before the disappearance, Daniel had been in a heated argument outside the Brenton diner with a man named Kyle Meadows, a former co-worker with a reputation for trouble. Witnesses said they argued over a job gone wrong, though no one knew what that meant. Kyle's house was searched. Nothing. He swore he hadn't seen Daniel since that night. His alibi was shaky, but without evidence, they couldn't hold him. Then there was the phone. Forensics showed it kept recording for 5 minutes after the call dropped. During that time, you can hear a series of clicks, 3, evenly spaced, like a car door or maybe a camera shutter. Then a metallic clang, something heavy being dragged. The sound of footsteps on gravel. Then, nothing. When Agent Brooks returned to the site, she noticed something the local deputies had missed. A narrow path cut through the grass toward an old drainage culvert that led under the highway. Inside, graffiti covered the concrete walls. Initials, dates, strange symbols. One tag stood out. R9, we watch. The paint was fresh. Locals told her it was an old rumor, a group of drifters who lived near the quarry, calling themselves Route 9. Teenagers used to dare each other to go find them back in the 90s. Most people thought it was urban legend stuff, but when they checked the sheriff's old case files, there were references, small disappearances, going back decades, all within 2 miles of that same road. A hitchhiker in 1982. A runaway in 1995. A man found wandering miles away in 2004, covered in mud, unable to remember his name. Brooks reopened every one of them. Meanwhile, Daniel's mother refused to believe he was dead. She told reporters that her son had called her the week before he vanished, saying he'd found something near the quarry. Something that didn't belong there. She said he sounded nervous, like he was being watched. The sheriff dismissed it as grief talking until they checked Daniel's laptop. In his downloads folder was a series of maps, old survey charts of the quarry area, some dating back to the 1950s. The files were traced to a defunct county database. He'd also bookmarked an article about undocumented sinkholes beneath Route 9. One file stood out. A photograph labeled, "Found it. Don't tell anyone." It was blurry, taken at night, showing what looked like a concrete door embedded in rock, half covered by vines. Brooks ordered a full excavation of the quarry perimeter. What they found wasn't a door, exactly, but something worse. A reinforced steel hatch, sealed shut with rusted bolts. The kind used in storm shelters or old military storage bunkers. County records didn't list any structure there. The hatch was pried open at dawn, the air inside thick and stale. It led down a narrow shaft, about 20 feet deep, into a chamber lined with brick. Inside were old crates, a rusted folding chair, and scraps of paper plastered to the walls, newspaper clippings, missing person posters, some so faded they crumbled when touched. And in the corner, a single item that stopped everyone cold: Daniel's car key. The press never learned about the bunker. The FBI sealed it off within hours, but word leaked, as it always does in small towns. By nightfall, Brenton was buzzing with theories: cults, government experiments, buried crimes. Some said the quarry was once used by the Army Corps of Engineers. Others whispered about the Route 9 group again, saying the name had appeared in old county logs connected to civil defense storage. Agent Brooks knew the town was holding its breath. She stood on the edge of the quarry that evening, looking down at the dark water where Daniel's scent had vanished. Her team had been there less than a week, and already the case felt older than time, as if the land itself was hiding something. Before she left, she made one note in her field log. If Reeves found something, someone wanted it buried again. And then, another twist. 2 days later, Daniel's car keys, the same ones they'd found in the bunker, reappeared on the hood of the sheriff's cruiser. No prints, no witnesses, just sitting there, as if someone wanted to remind them they were still watching. The next morning, the sheriff's office was crawling with feds. They'd locked down the entire quarry perimeter, blocked the road with unmarked SUVs, and told every local reporter that it was a routine environmental inspection. But Brenton wasn't the kind of place where you could hide anything for long. Farmers who passed by that stretch of Route 9 that morning said they saw agents in hazmat suits hauling crates out of the ground. One man claimed he heard something metallic clatter against the truck bed, something that didn't sound like rock or debris. By noon, the FBI field command post had set up in the old firehouse downtown. Agent Valerie Brooks had a habit of writing notes on yellow legal pads, longhand, as if typing would break her concentration. The board behind her was already covered in photos. Daniel Reeves, age 33, the quarry, the hatch, the key, and beside all of that, the words written in red ink, Route 9, we watch. The bunker had yielded a few other artifacts besides Daniel's key: a stack of deteriorated film reels, 2 broken Polaroid cameras, and what looked like a torn page from an old ledger. The paper was fragile, but Brooks' tech team carefully reconstructed the faded type. It read, "Storage Compartment B, authorized personnel only, 1957. Underneath it were 6 names. The last one was underlined: CPT R.L. Marin. Marin wasn't a name anyone in Brenton recognized, but a search of Army Corps records confirmed it. Captain Robert L. Marin, stationed in Missouri during the late 1950s. He'd overseen a series of civil defense infrastructure projects in rural counties, essentially Cold War fallout shelters and storage depots for emergency supplies. What caught Brooks' attention, though, was the note on his file. Transfer terminated. Cause, internal incident. When the FBI dug deeper, they found that Marin had vanished too. Disappeared in 1960, 3 days after submitting a classified report to Washington. No follow-up, no remains, no discharge, just another ghost in the system. That afternoon, Brooks walked the perimeter again. The quarry's gray water shimmered like glass under a low winter sun. She could still see the patch of disturbed soil where they'd unearthed the hatch. The wind smelled faintly metallic, the kind of air you get around old iron. Her boots crunched over gravel until she reached the far edge, where a small wooden cross jutted from the earth. Someone had left it there overnight, painted white. No name, no flowers, just a hand-carved word burned into the wood: returned. She stood there for a long time. Back at headquarters, the audio techs finished processing the rest of Daniel's 911 recording. What they found sent a chill through the room. Those 3 metallic clicks, the ones they'd thought were car doors, weren't random. They matched a sound profile from the bunker's locking mechanism. The clicks were identical to the bolts being unfastened, meaning Daniel might have found the hatch himself that night, tried to open it, and whatever, or whoever, was down there didn't want him to. Brooks ordered another sweep of the site, but this time she expanded the radius 2 miles out. They brought in ground-penetrating radar, scanning for any other subsurface structures. What they found were faint outlines. 2 more sealed chambers beneath the old quarry road, both connected by what looked like narrow tunnels. Unmapped, undocumented. The tunnels ran toward the woods, straight under County Route 9. That discovery changed the tone of everything. The locals started talking about the Watchers. That's what people used to call them back in the 80s when livestock started disappearing, a name whispered more as folklore than fact. People said strange lights moved through the fields at night, that men in gray suits came once a year to test soil samples and never explained why. The quarry, they said, had been off limits for a reason. Brooks didn't believe in folklore, but she did believe in patterns. When she cross-referenced the coordinates of Daniel's disappearance with older case files, she found an eerie correlation. Every unexplained missing person between 1959 and 2019 in Brenton County fell within the same 1-mile radius. 34 in total, and every one of them vanished near an entrance to the old civil defense tunnels. The deeper she went, the stranger it got. The Army Corps files, the few that weren't redacted, referenced material containment and non-civilian assets. In one memo, dated August 12, 1958, Captain Marin described unusual structural instability due to subsurface activity. That was the last document before his disappearance. Brooks began to suspect the quarry was only part of a larger system. She requested aerial LiDAR scans from the State Geological Office. When the images came back, the full picture emerged: an entire grid of buried chambers beneath the northern stretch of Brenton. Some collapsed, others intact. The tunnels were laid out like a wheel, with the quarry as the center hub, and all of it had been erased from public maps some time after 1972. That night, Brooks drove out to the Reeves property. Daniel's mother, Evelyn, lived alone in a white clapboard house surrounded by frost-bitten fields. Her hands shook as she poured coffee for the agent. The house smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic, the kind of scent that clings to hospital visits. On the mantel sat framed photos of Daniel through the years: graduation, fishing trips, a faded Polaroid of him and his father standing beside a rusted pickup truck. Evelyn handed Brooks a shoebox. "He was scared," she said softly. "He told me he'd been followed for weeks. Thought it was his imagination, but then he started getting letters." Inside the box were 3 envelopes, each postmarked from St. Louis, but with no return address. Inside each was a single sheet of paper with one typed line: "We remember Route 9. No signatures, no explanations, just the same phrase, typed on what looked like an old manual typewriter. Brooks' pulse quickened. She took the letters back to the lab. The FBI's document analysts confirmed they were typed on a Remington Model 5. Discontinued in 1940s, the ink composition matched a type of carbon ribbon used only in federal offices through the early 1960s. Someone had gone through great effort to make those letters look like they came from the past. Later that week, another tip surfaced. A retired maintenance worker named Henry Doyle came forward after seeing the case on the news. He claimed he'd worked briefly at the quarry in 1974, cleaning out old runoff drains. Said he found something strange down there: a sealed door behind a concrete wall, marked with a faded stencil, R9AUX. When he asked his supervisor about it, the man told him to forget it existed. 2 weeks later, Doyle was reassigned to another site without explanation. Brooks took him back to the quarry. He pointed out the spot. The wall was still there, newer concrete, mismatched with the original structure. Her team drilled through it and found exactly what he'd described: a narrow corridor leading to a metal door, stamped "Auxiliary Access, property of U.S. Army Corps." It was welded shut from the inside. The moment the cutting torch breached the door, a burst of cold air rushed out. The corridor beyond was lined with pipes, corroded and dripping. The walls were covered with a thin layer of white residue, calcium from years of seepage. And in the corner of that chamber, under the glare of the agent's flashlights, lay something impossible. A stack of personal items, a leather wallet, a woman's shoe, a driver's license issued to a name last seen in 1907, one of the missing persons from the Route 9 list, and next to it, something newer, a flashlight branded Reeves HVAC Services. For Brooks, that was the breaking point. This wasn't just a missing person. It was a pattern of disappearances stretching across 60 years, all converging on this forgotten underground labyrinth. That night, she called her superior in Kansas City. "We need a full excavation," she said flatly. "And we need to find out what Marin was building down here." Her supervisor paused before replying. "Careful, Brooks. You start digging into old federal contracts, you might find things nobody wants found." She didn't care. The following morning, the Bureau authorized a full team of geotechnical engineers, historians, and forensic specialists. The quarry would be sealed off completely. The official story was ground instability and chemical contamination. But everyone in Brenton knew the truth, or at least they felt it. Something under their town had woken up again. That same night, around 3 a.m., the sheriff's office received another 911 call. Same number Daniel had dialed, same static on the line, and faintly, the same whisper. "Please." The dispatcher froze. The call was traced to the quarry road. When deputies arrived, they found nothing but tire tracks and a single Polaroid photograph pinned to a tree. It showed the quarry entrance, and standing at the edge of the frame, barely visible in the dark, was Daniel Reeves. The photograph didn't make sense. It was verified within hours. Genuine Polaroid film, aged only days, impossible to fake in that quality. The timestamp, developed faintly along the border, suggested it had been taken just after midnight, barely 3 hours before the 911 call hit the dispatcher's console. Daniel Reeves, presumed missing for almost 2 weeks, appeared in the image alive, or something close to it. His expression was hard to read, his eyes wide and glassy. But his face wasn't the only strange thing. Behind him, in the distance, lights glowed from inside the quarry. Not flashlights, fixed beams, steady and pale, the kind you'd expect from industrial flood lamps. Except there were none installed down there. The quarry had been closed to civilians for years, and the FBI had seized all portable lighting equipment days before. Agent Valerie Brooks stared at the photograph for nearly an hour before saying anything. Then, quietly, to herself, "He's not alone down there." The Bureau reacted fast. A rapid response team arrived by dawn. Floodlights and mobile command units surrounded the perimeter, turning the quarry into something out of a military staging ground. Locals gathered on the ridge despite warnings to stay back, whispering about what they'd seen in the news, what they'd heard on scanners. The official statement claimed it was a radiological containment incident. That didn't stop people from talking. In Brenton, rumor spreads faster than fire in a dry field. By mid-morning, Brooks had a tactical crew descending into the quarry under her supervision, The hatch they'd opened earlier that week had been resealed by Bureau engineers. But this time, she wanted to go deeper. Past the auxiliary door, into the network they'd found with radar imaging. The descent was slow. The tunnels below were narrow, roughly hewn, branching like veins beneath the bedrock. Every few feet, the flashlights caught markings, painted letters, some faded to the color of ash. R9A1, R9C2. Each chamber smelled of damp concrete and iron. Somewhere in the darkness, water dripped in a slow, steady rhythm, echoing like a heartbeat. The team reached what looked like an old operations room. Rusted control panels lined one wall, dials corroded, paper tags still hanging from switches. A faded stencil on the bulkhead read, "Property of Civil Defense, 1958. And then, something new. A single folding chair in the center of the room, untouched by dust. On it lay a cassette tape, unmarked except for a strip of masking tape across the front. 3 letters written in black ink. DR. Brooks felt the chill creep up her neck. Back at the command post, they played the tape. At first, just static. Then Daniel's voice, faint and shaky. "If you find this, don't open anything else. It's not a shelter. It's a holding room. I thought I was helping them, but they never left." The rest was inaudible. A muffled cry, the screech of metal, a second voice whispering something low, rhythmic. Then silence. When the audio techs filtered the background noise, they found something chilling, a steady hum at exactly 60 hertz. The kind of resonance used by industrial generators. The hum meant power, but the quarry hadn't had electrical service in decades. Brooks ordered another team underground, this time bringing along portable ground sensors. They followed the hum. It led to a sealed corridor blocked by collapsed stone. After an hour of clearing debris, they uncovered a heavy door marked Storage R9 Primary. The paint around the handle was scratched raw, as if someone had tried to claw it open. When the team breached it, stale air poured out, thick and sour. The chamber inside was bigger, 40 feet long, maybe more, filled with rows of metal shelving. Old supplies, military-grade crates, rusted canisters. But at the far end stood something that didn't belong. A reinforced glass enclosure, shattered from the inside. On the wall beside it, painted in faded black, Project Route 9, active until termination. Brooks' flashlight beam trembled slightly as she moved closer. The shattered enclosure was surrounded by deep gouges in the concrete, like something had tried to get out. Inside the shards of glass, a faint residue. White, fibrous, not dust. The forensics team later determined it was human tissue, and next to it, a set of footprints. Bare, adult-sized, leading away from the glass and vanishing into the dark tunnel beyond. Brooks didn't sleep that night. She sat in the field office, staring at a stack of documents she wasn't supposed to have. The Corps' records, the Marin files, the memos referencing biological preservation protocols and non-classified test subjects. Most of it was redacted, but a few words stood out enough to make her sick. Subject containment compromised. Exposure to chemical compound, R941 unstable. Recommend full neutralization and asset burial. The year on the memo, 1960. The same year Captain Marin disappeared. The following morning, the FBI's Washington office called. The conversation was short. "Agent Brooks," said a voice she didn't recognize. "You are to cease all excavation operations immediately. The Brenton site has been reclassified as a national defense zone." She started to protest, but the line went dead. An hour later, a convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled into town. Men in dark suits flashed credentials none of the local officers recognized. They took over the command post, collected evidence, and ordered Brooks' team to stand down. By afternoon, half her files were gone. The letters from Daniel Reeves, the tape, even the Polaroid. When she demanded answers, one of the men said quietly, "You saw something that was never supposed to be found." But what shook her most was what they didn't take. They left the original 911 recording, Daniel's call, almost as if they wanted her to keep it. That night, she played it again, alone in her motel room. The static hissed like distant rain. But this time, she noticed something new, a faint sound just before the call cut off. It wasn't static, it was breathing, right next to the phone. And then, a whisper. "Help me. It's not dead." She stopped the tape. Her reflection in the motel mirror looked pale under the flickering lamp. By the next morning, Brenton was a ghost town. The Bureau's convoy sealed off Route 9 with concrete barricades. Residents were told it was due to ground instability and advised to evacuate for environmental safety. But some stayed. Stubborn farmers, old families who'd lived there generations. They watched from their porches as government trucks rolled past with tarps covering unmarked crates. Daniel Reeves refused to leave. When Brooks drove back to check on her, the house was cold, the front door open. A half-finished cup of coffee sat on the kitchen table. Upstairs, Daniel's room looked untouched. Bed made, photos on the wall, everything in its place. But the window was wide open. On the floor beneath it, a set of muddy footprints led out toward the field, and on the bedspread, a fresh Polaroid photograph. It showed the same quarry entrance again, but this time, the angle was from inside the pit. In the corner, a pale hand reached out toward the lens. Brooks ran the photo through forensic imaging. The hand bore a faint scar across the thumb, the same scar Daniel Reeves had from a childhood bike accident. But there was something else in the photo, a shadow behind the hand, humanoid but distorted, tall and thin, like someone standing under flickering light. When she enhanced the frame, she saw a pattern on the figure's chest, a military insignia. The patch read, CPT RL Marin. 2 nights later, Brooks parked her SUV outside the quarry fence. The wind howled across the barren fields, carrying the smell of rain and iron. She left the engine running, her flashlight steady in her hand. She walked down the path where Daniel's scent had first vanished. The ground was soft, the gravel damp. Somewhere beneath her, the tunnels stretched like veins through stone, filled with secrets buried 6 decades deep. She paused when she heard it, a sound faint but unmistakable. Breathing. Not hers. Slow, deliberate, coming from the darkness below. Then, a voice, distant, echoing from the quarry pit. "Please, don't let them bury me again." She raised her flashlight. Something moved in the shadows, and for the first time since the case began, Agent Valerie Brooks felt real fear. The sound came from the quarry's pit, low, human, but not quite right. It carried that broken cadence people get when they've been whispering for hours, the kind that scrapes against the back of the throat. Brooks froze at the edge, beam of her flashlight cutting through mist and stone dust. The light swept across gravel, down into the hollow where the bunker's hatch still lay open. The padlock that had sealed it only days earlier was gone. She called it in. No one answered. Her radio hissed like the 911 tape. "Command, this is Agent Brooks. I need confirmation you're receiving." The transmission dissolved into static. Then, faintly, through the noise, "Leave it alone." She dropped the radio to her vest and stepped forward. The wind was rising, carrying the smell of wet earth and machinery oil. The descent path was slick, but she moved quickly, boots finding traction where the gravel met limestone. When she reached the hatch, she crouched and aimed the light inside. The ladder was still there, metal rungs descending into darkness. A sound drifted up from below, a faint metallic clank, followed by breathing again. Then a voice. "Agent Brooks?" She froze. The voice was Daniel's. She climbed down slowly, counting each rung until her boots hit solid ground. The tunnel stretched out ahead, its walls glistening with condensation. Somewhere deeper inside, a single light flickered. Yellow, unsteady, like a dying bulb. Her hand tightened on the pistol holster. "Daniel?" she called, her voice echoing against stone. "It's Valerie Brooks. I'm here to help you." No answer. Just the steady hum of what sounded like old wiring, humming like before. The air grew colder the farther she walked, the smell shifting from damp rock to something metallic and sour. Then she saw him. Daniel Reeves stood at the end of the corridor, facing the wall. He was barefoot, clothes torn, skin pale as chalk under the flickering light. When he turned, his eyes were wide, pupils blown, but not wild, more like someone caught between waking and dream. "Daniel," she said softly, "we're going to get you out of here." He shook his head. "You shouldn't have come back." "I have to," she said. "We need to know what happened. What did you find down here?" He glanced at the wall behind him. Something had been carved into it, letters etched deep into concrete. "R9 will rise." "I tried to stop it," he whispered. "They wouldn't let me." "Who?" Daniel's breathing quickened. "They were never gone. They just needed someone to open it again." A metallic clang echoed from somewhere deeper in the tunnels. Brooks swung the flashlight. The beam caught the glint of something metallic. Another door, identical to the first. But this one stood slightly ajar. "Daniel, we need to leave." He didn't move. "It's awake now." She grabbed his arm. His skin was cold, almost feverless. "Come on." He looked at her then, eyes glassy with tears that didn't fall. "You can't shut it twice." When they reached the ladder, the air above had changed. The wind outside roared down through the shaft, carrying the smell of ozone, like a storm about to break. Halfway up, Daniel stopped. "He's here." Brooks looked down. "Who?" Daniel's voice trembled. "Marin." Before she could respond, the light above them snapped out. The darkness was complete. Something metallic scraped against the ladder. Brooks fired upward instinctively, 3 shots into the dark. Each one echoed until the sound bled into nothing. When the light flickered back on from her flashlight, Daniel was gone. Her hand trembled as she climbed the rest of the way. The surface was empty, the quarry silent again. Her SUV's headlights glowed faintly from the ridge above. For a moment, she thought she saw a silhouette standing beside it, a man in an old army coat, posture rigid, watching her. But when she blinked, he was gone. She called for backup again. Still nothing. The radio only hissed. By morning, the bureau was back. Men in unmarked vans, hazmat suits, concrete mixers. They said nothing to the locals, only told the sheriff the quarry was now federal property. By dusk, they poured fresh cement over the entire hatch, sealing the entrance forever. Brooks stood on the ridge as the last truck rolled out. The site looked sterile now, lifeless, but she knew what she'd seen. She turned the Polaroid, the one from the Reeves house, over in her hands. She hadn't turned it in. On the back, written in smeared ink, was a single line she hadn't noticed before. If you bury the truth, it still breathes. That night, she returned to her motel. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown number. She answered without speaking. Static. Then a whisper, the same as the 911 call. "Help me. It's not dead." She closed her eyes, listening. Behind the static, she could hear the faint hum of machinery. Steady, rhythmic, 60 hertz. Then 3 metallic clicks, and a voice she didn't recognize, low and deliberate. "Agent Brooks, termination authorized." The line went dead. Weeks later, Brenton was empty. The town's population dropped by half. The quarry road was removed from GP entirely. Locals who stayed said the nights got quieter, like the air itself was listening. Brooks was reassigned to a different state. Officially, the Reeves case remained open, but inactive. The files labeled Route 9 disappeared from Bureau archives entirely. One evening, packing her office, she found something wedged behind a filing drawer. An old cassette tape. The label read only Marin. She hesitated, then played it. Static. Then a voice, older, male, steady, but strained. "This is Captain Robert L. Marin, Civil Defense Division. They told us to contain it, not destroy it. But we couldn't. Whatever we found wasn't man-made. It wasn't from any country. It breathes through the ground. If anyone finds this, close the tunnels, seal the road. Do not call for help. Route 9 isn't a place, it's a pulse." The tape ended with the sound of boots running, a door slamming, and one final metallic click. Brooks sat in silence, the recorder still whirring. She realized what she'd been hearing on all those tapes. The clicks, the hum, the breathing. It wasn't random noise. It was a pattern, a rhythm, heartbeat. She leaned back in her chair and stared at the window. Beyond the glass, thunder rolled low across the horizon. And faintly, just for a moment, Rila thought she saw headlights moving along Route 9 again, though the road had been closed for months. A single car, stopping near the quarry, door opening. A voice calling out into the night, "Please!" The sound cut off. Brooks turned off the tape and whispered to no one, "It's starting again." Then she filed the cassette in a sealed evidence bag marked "For internal review only," and that was the last record ever made of the Brenton case. If you liked this story, please subscribe to the channel for more true crime mysteries.